गणेश शरणं शरणं गणेश साईश शरणं शरणं साईश साईश शरणं शरणं साईश गणेश शरणं शरणं गणेश
मन बंगारू परती बाबा बाबा मन बंगारू परती बाबा अति श्रृंगार वदना साई अति श्रृंगार वदना साई मन बंगारू परती बाबा अंतर्यामी साई अंतर्यामी साई मन सर्वांतर्यामी बाबा मन सर्वांतर्यामी बाबा मन बंगारू परती बाबा मन बंगारू परती बाबा
जय हरे कृष्णा गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
जय हरे कृष्णा
गोवर्धन गिरिधारी जय हरे कृष्णा गोवर्धन गिरिधारी हरे कृष्णा गोवर्धन गिरिधारी राधा मोहन राधा जीवन राधा मोहन राधा जीवन राधा मोहन राधा जीवन मोहन राधा जीवन मंजुल कुंज विहारी मंजुल कुंज विहारी मंजुल कुंज विहारी मंजुल कुंज विहारी जय हरे कृष्णा गोवर्धन गिरिधारी जय हरे कृष्णा गोवर्धन गिरिधारी राधा मोहन राधा जीवन राधा मोहन राधा जीवन मंजुल कुंज विहारी मंजुल कुंज विहारी मंजुल कुंज विहारी मंजुल कुंज विहारी जय हरे कृष्णा गोवर्धन गिरिधारी रास विलोला नंद लाला रास विलोला नंद लाला रास विलोला नंद लाला नंद लाला राधा माधव नंद लाला राधा माधव नंद लाला राधा माधव नंद लाला राधा माधव नंद लाला रास विलोला नंद लाला रासविलोला नन्दलाला
रासविलोला नन्दलाला
नन्दकिशोरा नन्दलाला
नन्दकिशोरा नन्दलाला
नन्दकिशोरा नन्दलाला
नन्दकिशोरा नन्दलाला
नवनीतचोरा नन्दलाला
नवनीतचोरा नन्दलाला
हे नवनीतचोरा नन्दलाला
नवनीतचोरा नन्दलाला
नन्दलाला साई नन्दलाला
नन्दलाला साई नन्दलाला
हे नन्दलाला साई नन्दलाला
हे नन्दलाला साई नन्दलाला
रासविलोला नन्दलाला
रासविलोला नन्दलाला
राधा माधव नन्दलाला
राधा माधव नन्दलाला
रासविलोला नन्दलाला
रासविलोला नन्दलाला
नन्दकिशोरा नन्दलाला
नन्दकिशोरा नन्दलाला
नवनीतचोरा नन्दलाला
नवनीतचोरा नन्दलाला
हे नवनीतचोरा नन्दलाला
नवनीतचोरा नन्दलाला
नन्दलाला साई नन्दलाला
नन्दलोला
हे नन्दलाला साई नन्दलाला
नन्दलाला साई नन्दलाला
रासविलोला नन्दलाला जय गुरु ओंकारा जय जय सद्गुरु ओंकारा
जय गुरु ओंकारा सद्गुरु ओंकारा
जय गुरु ओंकारा जय जय सद्गुरु ओंकारा
जय गुरु ओंकारा जय जय सद्गुरु ओंकारा
ब्रह्मा विष्णु सदाशिवा
ब्रह्मा विष्णु सदा शिवा
ब्रह्मा विष्णु सदाशिवा
ब्रह्मा विष्णु सदा शिवा
हर 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 महादेवा
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 जय गुरु ओंकारा जय जय सद्गुरु ओंकारा
जय गुरु ओंकारा जय जय सद्गुरु ओंकारा
ब्रह्मा विष्णु सदाशिवा
ब्रह्मा विष्णु सदा शिवा
हर 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 महादेवा
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 जय गुरु ओंकारा जय सद्गुरु ओंकारा चित्त चोरा यशोदा के बाल नवनीत चोर गोपाल
चित्त चोर यशोदा के बाल नवनीत चोर गोपाल
चित्त चोरा यशोदा के बाल नवनीत चोर गोपाल
चित्त चोर यशोदा के बाल नवनीत चोर गोपाल
गोपाल गोपाल गोपाल गोवर्धनधर गोपाल
गोपाल गोपाल गोपाल गोवर्धनधर गोपाल
गोपाल गोपाल गोपाल गोपाल गोवर्धनधर गोपाल
गोपाल गोपाल गोपाल गोवर्धनधर गोपाल
गोपाल गोपाल गोपाल गोपाल गोवर्धनधर गोपाल
गोपाल गोपाल गोपाल गोपाल गोवर्धनधर गोपाल
चित चोरा यशोदा के बाल नवनीत चोर गोपाल
चित्त चोरा यशोदा के बाल नवनीत चोर गोपाल
गोपाल गोपाल गोपाल गोवर्धनधर गोपाल
गोपाल गोपाल गोपाल गोवर्धनधर गोपाल
गोपाल गोपाल गोपाल गोपाल गोवर्धनधर गोपाल
गोपाल गोपाल गोपाल गोवर्धनधर गोपाल
चित चोरा यशोदा के बाल नवनीत चोर गोपाल पार करो उद्धार करो हे पतिपुरी भगवान
पार करो उपकार करो प्रतिपुरी भगवान
हरे राम 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 घन श्याम 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 हे साईनाथ भगवान
हरे राम 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 घन श्याम 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 हे साईनाथ भगवान
दीन दया भर करुणा मूर्ति कलियुग अवतार साई भगवान
दीन दया कर काना मूर्ति कलियुग अवतार साई भगवान
अल्लाह साई बुद्ध जोरास्त्र यीशु क्रिस्त भगवान
अल्लाह साई बुद्ध जोरास्त्र यीशु क्रिस्त भगवान
पार करो उद्धार करो प्रभु पतिपुरी भगवान
पार करो उद्धार करो हे पुरी भगवान
हरे राम 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 घन श्याम 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 हे साईनाथ भगवान
हरे राम 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 घन श्याम 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 हरे साईनाथ भगवान
दीन दया पर करुणा मूर्ति कलियुग अवतार साई भगवान
दीन दया करुणा मूर्ति कलियुग अवतार साई भगवान
दीन दया कर करुणा मूर्ति सतयुग अवतार साई भगवान
दीन दया कर करुणा मूर्ति कलियुग अवतार साई भगवान
अल्लाह साई बुद्ध जोरास्त्र यीशु क्रिस्त भगवान
अल्लाह साई बुद्ध जोरास्त्र ಯೇಸು ಕ್ರಿಸ್ತ ಭಗವಾನ್
अल्लाह साई बुद्ध ज़ोरास्ट्र यीशु क्रिस्त भगवान
ज़ोरास्ट्र यीशु क्रिस्त भगवान
पार करो उद्धार करो प्रभु पतिपुरी भगवान हरे राम 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 घन श्याम 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 हे साई नाथ भगवान शिव महेश्वरा शिव महेश्वरा शिव महेश्वरा साई राम
ईश्वर शिव महेश्वर शिव महेश्वर साई राम
शिव महेश्वर
शिव महेश्वर शिव महेश्वर साई राम शिव महेश्वर शिव महेश्वर साई राम
कैलासवासा महादेवा
कैलासवासा महादेवा
कैलासवासा महादेवा
कैलासवासा महादेवा
जगदीश्वर हर महादेवा
जगदीश्वर हर महादेवा
जगदीश्वर हर महादेवा
जगदीश्वर हर महादेवा
त्रिभुवन पाल बाबा साई देवा
त्रिभुवन पाल देवा साई देवा
त्रिभुवन पाल बाबा साई देवा
मनपाल बाबा साई देवा
शिव महेश्वरा शिव महेश्वर शिव महेश्वरा साई राम
शिव महेश्वर शिव महेश्वर शिव महेश्वर साई राम
शिव महेश्वर
शिव महेश्वर शिव महेश्वर साई राम
शिव
ईश्वर साई राम
शिव
महेश्वर साई राम
शिव महेश्वरा शिव शंकरा शिव महादेवा साई राम
शिव महेश्वर शिव शंकर शिव महादेव साई राम
कैलासवासा महादेवा
कैलासवासा महादेवा
जगदीश्वर हर महादेवा
जगदीश्वर हर महादेवा
त्रिभुवन पाल बाबा साई देवा
त्रिभुवन पाल
ओम त्रिभुवन पाल बाबा साई देवा शिव महेश्वरा शिव महेश्वर शिव महेश्वरा साई राम शिव महेश्वर शिव शंकर शिव महादेवा साई राम
ಇದು ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಪಾಠ
सुब्रह्मण्यम सुब्रह्मण्यम षण्मुखनाथ सुब्रह्मण्यम
सुब्रह्मण्यम सुब्रह्मण्यम षण्मुखनाथ सुब्रह्मण्यम
सुब्रह्मण्यम सुब्रह्मण्यम षण्मुखनाथ सुब्रह्मण्यम
मण्यम सुब्रह्मण्यम षण्मुखनाथ सुब्रह्मण्यम
सुब्रह्मण्यम सुब्रह्मण्यम षण्मुखनाथ सुब्रह्मण्यम
सुब्रह्मण्यम सुब्रह्मण्यम षण्मुखनाथ सुब्रह्मण्यम
सुब्रह्मण्यम सुब्रह्मण्यम षण्मुखनाथ सुब्रह्मण्यम
सुब्रह्मण्यम षण्मुखनाथ सुब्रह्मण्यम
शिव 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 सुब्रह्मण्यम हर 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 सुब्रह्मण्यम
शिव 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 सुब्रह्मण्यम हर 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 सुब्रह्मण्यम
शिव 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 सुब्रह्मण्यम हर 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 सुब्रह्मण्यम
सुब्रह्मण्यम हर 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 सुब्रह्मण्यम
शिव शिव हर हर सुब्रह्मण्यम हर हर शिव शिव सुब्रह्मण्यम
हर हर सुब्रह्मण्यम हर हर शिव शिव सुब्रह्मण्यम
शिव शिव हर हर सुब्रह्मण्यम हर हर शिव शिव सुब्रह्मण्यम
हर हर शिव शिव सुब्रह्मण्यम
शिव शरवण भव सुब्रह्मण्यम गुरु शरवण भव सुब्रह्मण्यम
शिव सुब्रह्मण्यम गुरु शरवण भव सुब्रह्मण्यम
शरण भव सुब्रह्मण्यम गुरु शरवण भव सुब्रह्मण्यम
शिव शरवण भव सुब्रह्मण्यम गुरु शरवण भव सुब्रह्मण्यम
शिव शिव हर हर सुब्रह्मण्यम हर हर शिव शिव सुब्रह्मण्यम
सुब्रह्मण्यम हर हर शिव शिव सुब्रह्मण्यम
शिव शिव हर हर सुब्रह्मण्यम हर हर शिव शिव सुब्रह्मण्यम
शिव शिव हर हर सुब्रह्मण्यम हर हर शिव शिव सुब्रह्मण्यम
सुब्रह्मण्यम सुब्रह्मण्यम षण्मुखनाथ सुब्रह्मण्यम
षण्मुखनाथ सुब्रह्मण्यम
सुब्रह्मण्यम सुब्रह्मण्यम षण्मुखनाथ सुब्रह्मण्यम
सुब्रह्मण्यम सुब्रह्मण्यम षण्मुखनाथ सुब्रह्मण्यम
शिव 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 सुब्रह्मण्यम हर 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 सुब्रह्मण्यम
शिव 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 सुब्रह्मण्यम हर 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 सुब्रह्मण्यम
शिव शिव हर हर सुब्रह्मण्यम हर हर शिव शिव सुब्रह्मण्यम
शिव शिव हर हर सुब्रह्मण्यम हर हर शिव शिव सुब्रह्मण्यम
सुब्रह्मण्यम सुब्रह्मण्यम षण्मुखनाथ सुब्रह्मण्यम
ब्रह्मण्यम षण्मुखनाथ सुब्रह्मण्यम
शिव शरण भव सुब्रह्मण्यम गुरु शरण भव सुब्रह्मण्यम
शिव शरवण भव सुब्रह्मण्यम गुरु भव सुब्रह्मण्यम
शिव शिव हर हर सुब्रह्मण्यम हर हर शिव सुब्रह्मण्यम
शिव शिव हर हर सुब्रह्मण्यम हर हर शिव शिव सुब्रह्मण्यम
सुब्रह्मण्यम सुब्रह्मण्यम षण्मुखनाथ सुब्रह्मण्यम 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 षण्मुखनाथ सुब्रह्मण्यम
The next will be the Vishnu Sahasranama. This will be chanted by my aunts, Veda and Lakshmi from the US. So Vishnu Sahasranama everybody knows, so I didn't have the copies made, but we can just sing along with them. All right.
सहस्रनामस्तोत्रम् शुक्लाम्बरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये यस्य द्विरदवक्त्राद्याः पारिषद्याः परश्वतं विघ्नं विघ्नन्ति सततं विश्वक्सेनं तमाश्रये व्यासं वसिष्ठनप्तारं शक्तेः पौत्रमकल्मषं पराशरात्मजं वन्दे सुखतातं तपोनिधिं व्यासाय विष्णुरूपाय व्यासरूपाय विष्णवे नमो वै ब्रह्मनिधये वासिष्ठाय नमो नमः अविकाराय शुद्धाय नित्याय परमात्मने सदैकरूपरूपाय विष्णवे सर्वजिष्णवे यस्य स्मरणमात्रेण जन्मसंसारबन्धनात् विमुच्यते नमस्तस्मै विष्णवे प्रभविष्णवे ॐ नमो विष्णवे प्रभविष्णवे श्रीवैशम्पायन उवाच श्रुत्वा धर्मान् अशेषेण पावनानि च सर्वशः युधिष्ठिरश्चान्तनवं पुनरेवाभ्यभाषत युधिष्ठिर उवाच किमेकं दैवतं लोके किं वाप्येकं परायणं सुवन्तः कमर्चन्तः प्राप्नुयुर्मानवाः शुभम् को धर्मः सर्वधर्माणां भवतः परमो मतः किं जपन्मुच्यते जन्तुर्जन्मसंसारबन्धनात्
श्रीभीष्म उवाच जगत्प्रभुं देवदेवम् अनन्तं पुरुषोत्तमं स्तुवन्नाम सहस्रेण पुरुषः सततोत्थितः तमेव चार्चयन् नित्यं भक्त्या पुरुषम् अव्ययम् ध्यायन् स्तुवन्नमस्यंश्च यजमानस्तमेव च अनादिनिधनं विष्णुं सर्वलोकमहेश्वरं लोकाध्यक्षं स्तुवन्नित्यं सर्वदुःखादिगो भवेत् ब्रह्मण्यं सर्वधर्मज्ञं लोकानां कीर्तिवर्धनं लोकनाथं महद्भूतं सर्वभूतभवोद्भवम् एष मे सर्वधर्माणां धर्मोऽधिकतमो मतः यद्भक्त्या पुण्डरीकाक्षं स्तवैरर्च्येन्नरः सदा परमं यो महत्तेजः परमं यो महत्तपः परमं यो महद्ब्रह्म परमं यः परायणं पवित्राणां पवित्रं यो मङ्गलानां च मङ्गलं दैवतं देवतानां च भूतानां यो व्ययः पिता यतः सर्वाणि भूतानि भवन्त्यादियुगागमे यस्मिंश्च प्रलयं यान्ति पुनरेव युगक्षये तस्य लोकप्रधानस्य जगन्नाथस्य भूपते विष्णोर्नाम सहस्रं मे शृणु पापभयापहम् यानि नामानि गौणानि विख्यातानि महात्मनः ऋषिभिः परिगीतानि तानि वक्ष्यामि भूतये ऋषिर्नाम्नां सहस्रस्य वेदव्यासो महामुनिः छन्दोऽनुष्टुप् तथा देवो भगवान् देवकीसुतः अमृतांशूद्भवो बीजं शक्तिर्देवकीनन्दनः त्रिसामा हृदयं तस्य शान्त्यर्थे विनियुज्यते
विष्णुं विष्णुं महाविष्णुं प्रभविष्णुं महेश्वरम् अनेकरूपदैत्यान्तं नमामि पुरुषोत्तमम् अस्य श्रीविष्णोर्दिव्यसहस्रनामस्तोत्रमहामन्त्रस्य श्रीवेदव्यासो भगवान् ऋषिः अनुष्ठुप्छन्दः श्रीमहाविष्णुः परमात्मा श्रीमन्नारायणो देवता अमृतांशुद्भवो भानुरिति देवकीनन्दनस्पष्टेति शक्तिः उद्भवः क्षोभनो देव इति परमो मन्त्रः शङ्खभृन्नन्दकी शक्तीति कीलकम् शार्ङ्गधन्वा गदाधर इत्यस्त्रम् रथाङ्गपाणिरक्षोभ्य इति नेत्रम् त्रिसामा सामगः सामेति कवचम् आनन्दं परब्रह्मेति योनिः ऋतुः सुदर्शनः काल इति दिग्बन्धः श्रीविश्वरूप इति ध्यानम् श्रीमहाविष्णुप्रीत्यर्थे श्रीसहस्रनामजपे विनियोगः ध्यानम् क्षीरोदन्वत्प्रदेशे श्रुतिमणिविलसत्कैकते मौक्तिकानां मालाकृष्टासनस्थस्फटिकमणिनिभैर्मौक्तिकैर्मण्डिताङ्गः शुभ्रैरभ्रैरगभ्रैरुपरिविरिसितैर्मुक्तपीयूषवर्षैः आनन्दीनः पुनीरादरणेन दधा कण्ठपाणिर्मुकुन्दः भूस्पादौ यस्य नाभिर्यदसुरनिलश्चन्द्रसूर्यौ सनेत्रे कर्णावासाश्चिरोद्यौ मुखमपि दहनो यस्य वास्तेयमब्धिः अन्तःस्थं यस्य विश्वं सुरनरखगो भोगिगन्धर्वदैत्यैः चित्रं रम्यते तं त्रिभुवनवपुषं विघ्नेशं नमामि। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय शान्ताकारं भुजगशयनं पद्मनाभं सुरेशं विश्वाधारं गगनसदृशं मेघवर्णं शुभाङ्गं लक्ष्मीकान्तं कमलनयनं योगिवृद्ध्यानगम्यं वन्दे विष्णुं भवभयहरं सर्वलोकैकनाथं मेघश्यामं पीतकौशेयवासं श्रीवत्साङ्कं कौस्तुभोद्भासिताङ्गं पुण्योपेतं पुण्डरीकायदाक्षं विष्णुं वन्दे सर्वलोकैकनाथं नमः समस्तभूतानाम् आदिभूताय भूभृते अनेकरूपरूपाय विष्णवे प्रभविष्णवे सशङ्खचक्रं सकिरीटकुण्डलं सपीतवस्त्रं सरसीरुहेक्षणं सहारवक्षस्थलशोभितं शुभं नमामि विष्णुं शिरसा चतुर्भुजम् छायायां पारिजातस्य हेमसिंहासनोपरि आसीनमम्बुजश्याममायताक्षमलङ्कृतं चन्द्राननं चतुर्बाहुं श्रीवत्साङ्कितवक्षसं रुक्मिणी सत्यभामाभ्यां सहितं कृष्णमाश्रये।
हरिः ओम्। विश्वं विष्णुर्वषट्कारो भूतभव्यभवत्प्रभुः भूतकृद्भूतभृद्भावो भूतात्मा भूतभावनः भूतात्मा परमात्मा च मुक्तानां परमागतिः अव्ययः पुरुषः साक्षी क्षेत्रज्ञोऽक्षर एव च योगो योगविदां नेता प्रधानपुरुषेश्वरः नारसिंहवपुः श्रीमान् केशवः पुरुषोत्तमः सर्वशिवस्थाणुर्भूतादिर्निधिरव्ययः सम्भवो भावनो भर्ता प्रभवः प्रभुरीश्वरः स्वयंभूः शम्भुरादित्यः पुष्कराक्षो महास्वनः अनादिनिधनो धाता विधाता धातुरुत्तमः अप्रमेयो हृषीकेशः पद्मनाभो अमरप्रभुः विश्वकर्मा मनुस्त्वष्टा स्थविष्ठस्थविरो ध्रुवः अग्राह्यः शाश्वतः कृष्णो लोहिताक्षः प्रतर्दनः प्रभूतस्त्रिककुब्धाम पवित्रं मङ्गलं परम् ईशानः प्राणदः प्राणो ज्येष्ठः श्रेष्ठः प्रजापतिः हिरण्यगर्भो भूगर्भो माधवो मधुसूदनः ईश्वरो विक्रमी धन्वी मेधावी विक्रमः क्रमः अनुत्तमो दुराधर्ष्यः कृतज्ञः कृतिरात्मवान् सुरेशः शरणं शर्म विश्वरेता प्रजाभवः अहः संवत्सरो व्यालः प्रत्ययः सर्वदर्शनः अजः सर्वेश्वरः सिद्धः सिद्धिः सर्वादिरच्युतः वृषाकपिरमेयात्मा सर्वयोगविनिःसृतः वसुर्वसुमनः सत्यः समात्मा संवितः समः अमोघः पुण्डरीकाक्षो वृषकर्मा वृषाकृतिः रुद्रो बहुशिरा बभ्रुर्विश्वयोनिः शुचिश्रवाः अमृतशाश्वतस्थाणुर्वरारोहो महातपाः सर्वगः सर्वविद्वानुर्विश्वक्सेनो जनार्दनः वेदो वेदविदव्यङ्गो वेदाङ्गो वेदवित्कविः लोकाध्यक्षः सुराध्यक्षो धर्माध्यक्षः कृताकृतः
चतुरात्मा चतुर्व्यूहश्चतुर्दंष्ट्रश्चतुर्भुजः प्राविष्णुर्भोजनं भोक्ता सहिष्णुर्जगदादिजः अनघो विजयो जेता विश्वयोनिः पुनर्वसुः उपेन्द्रो वामनः प्रांशुरमोघः शुचिरुर्जितः अतीन्द्रः सङ्ग्रहः सर्गो धृतात्मा नियमो यमः वेद्यो वैद्यः सदा योगी वीरः माधवो मधुः अतीन्द्रियो महामायो महोत्साहो महाबलः महाबुद्धिर्महावीर्यो महाशक्तिर्महाद्युतिः अनिर्देश्य वपुः श्रीमान् अमेयात्मा महाधृधृक् महेश्वासो महीभर्ता श्रीनिवासः सताङ्गतिः अनिरुद्धः सुरानन्दो गोविन्दो गोविदाम्पतिः
हरिर्दमनो हंसः सुपर्णो भुजगोत्तमः हिरण्यनाभस्तुतपाः पद्मनाभः प्रजापतिः अमृत्युः सर्वदृक्किन्धः सन्धाता सन्धिमान् स्थिरः अजो दुर्मर्शनश्चास्ता विश्रुतात्मा सुरारिः गुरुर्गुरुतमो धाम सत्यः सत्यपराक्रमः निमिषो निमिषस्रग्वी वाचस्पतिरुदारधीः अग्रणीर्ब्राह्मणी श्रीमान् न्यायो नेता समीरणः सहस्रमूर्धा विश्वात्मा सहस्राक्षः सहस्रपात् आवर्तनो निवृत्तात्मा संवृतः सम्प्रमर्दनः अहः संवर्तको वह्निरविनो धरणीधरः सुप्रसादः प्रसन्नात्मा विश्वकृद्विश्वभुर्विभुः सत्कर्ता सत्कृतः साधुर्जह्नुर्नारायणो नरः असङ्ख्येयोऽप्रमेयात्मा विशिष्टशिष्टकृत्स्थितिः सिद्धार्थः सिद्धसङ्कल्पः सिद्धिरः सिद्धिसाधनः वृषाही वृषभो विष्णुर्वृषपर्वा वृषोदरः वर्धनो वर्धमानश्च विविक्तस्तुतिसागरः सुभुजो दुर्धरो वाग्मी महेन्द्रो वसुदो वसुः नैकरूपो बृहद्रूपश्रुतिरिष्टः प्रकाशनः ओजस्तेजोद्युतिधरः प्रकाशात्मा प्रतापनः रुद्रस्पष्टाक्षरो मन्त्रश्चन्द्रांशुर्भास्करद्युतिः अमृतांशुद्भवो भानुश्रशबिन्दुः सुरेश्वरः औषधं जगतस्तेतुः सत्यधर्मपराक्रमः भूतभव्यभवन्नाथः पवनः पावनो नलः कामः कामकृत्कान्तः कामः कामप्रदः प्रभुः युगादिकृद्युगावर्तो नैकमायो महाशनः अदृश्यो व्यक्तरूपश्च सहस्रजितमधिकजित् इष्टो विशिष्टशिष्टेष्टशिखण्डीनोषो वृषः क्रोधः क्रोधकृत्कर्ता विश्वबाहुर्महीधरः अच्युतः प्रतितः प्राणः प्राणदो वासवानुजः अपां निधिरधिष्ठानम् अप्रमत्तः प्रतिष्ठितः स्कन्दः स्कन्दधरो धुर्यो वरदो वायुवाहनः वासुदेवो बृहद्भानुरावदेवः पुरन्दरः अशोकः सारणः सारः शूरः शौरिर्जनेश्वरः अनुकूलश्च तावत्तः पद्मी पद्मनिभेक्षणः पद्मनाभोरविन्दाक्षः पद्मगर्भशरीरभृत् महर्विवृद्धो वृद्धात्मा महाक्षोगरुडध्वजः अतुलशरभो भीमः समयज्ञो हविर्हरिः सर्वलक्षणलक्षण्यो लक्ष्मीवान् समितिञ्जयः विक्षरो रोहितो मार्गो हेतुर्दामोदरः सः महीधरो महाभागो वेगवानमिताचलः
उद्भवः क्षोभणो देवः श्रीगर्भः परमेश्वरः करणं कारणं कर्ता विकर्ता गहनो गुहः व्यवसायो व्यवस्थानः संस्थानस्थानदो ध्रुवः परर्धिः परमस्पष्टः तुष्टः पुष्टः शुभेक्षणः रामो विरामो विरतो मार्गो नेयो नयोनयः वीरः शक्तिमतां श्रेष्ठो धर्मो धर्मविदुत्तमः वैकुण्ठः पुरुषः प्राणः प्राणदः प्रणवः पृथुः हिरण्यगर्भः शत्रुघ्नो व्याप्तो वायुरधोक्षजः ऋतुः सुदर्शनः कालः परमेष्ठी परिग्रहः उग्रः संवत्सरो दक्षो विश्रामो विश्वदक्षिणः विस्तारस्थावरस्थाणुः प्रमाणं बीजमव्ययम् अर्थोऽनर्थो महाकोशो महाभोगो महाधनः अनिर्विण्णस्थविष्टो भूर्धर्मयूपो महामखः नक्षत्रनेमिर्नक्षत्री क्षमः क्षामः समीहनः यज्ञैज्यो महेज्यश्च क्रतुः सत्रं सतां गतिः सर्वदर्शी विमुक्तात्मा सर्वज्ञो ज्ञानमुत्तमम् सुरतः सुमुखः सूक्ष्मः सुघोषः सुखदः सुकृत् मनोहरो जितक्रोधो वीरबाहुर्विदारणः स्वापनः स्ववशो व्यापी नैकात्मानैककर्मकृत् वत्सरो वत्सलो वत्सी रत्नगर्भो धनेश्वरः धर्मगुग्धर्मकृद्धर्मी सदसत्क्षरमक्षरम् अविज्ञाता सहस्रांशुर्विधाता कृतलक्षणः गभस्तिनेमिः सत्त्वस्थः सिंहो भूतमहेश्वरः आदिदेवो महादेवो देवेशो देवभृद्गुरुः उत्तरो गोपतिर्गोप्ता ज्ञानगम्यः पुरातनः शरीरभूतभृद्भोक्ता कपीन्द्रो भूरिदक्षिणः सोमपो अमृतपः सोमः पुरुजित्पुरुषोत्तमः विनयो जयः सत्यसन्धो दाशार्थः सात्वतां पतिः जीवो विनयिता साक्षी मुकुन्दोऽमितविक्रमः अम्बोनिधिरनन्तात्मा महोदधिशयोऽन्तकः अजो महार्धस्वाभाव्यो जितामित्रः प्रमोदनः आनन्दो नन्दनो नन्दः सत्यधर्मात्रिविक्रमः महर्षिः कपिलाचार्यः कृतज्ञो मेदिनीपतिः त्रिपदस्त्रिदशाध्यक्षो महाशृङ्गः कृतान्तकृत् महावराहो गोविन्दः सुषेणः कनकाङ्गदी गुह्यो गभीरो गहनो गुप्तश्चक्रगदाधरः वेधास्वाङ्गोजितः कृष्णो दृढः सङ्कर्षणोच्युतः वरुणो वारुणो वृक्षः पुष्कराक्षो महामनाः भगवान् भगहानन्दी वनमालीहलायुधः आदित्यो ज्योतिरादित्यः सहिष्णुर्गतिसत्तमः
सुधन्वाखण्डपरुषुर्दारुणो द्रविणप्रदः दिविस्कृत्सर्वदृग्व्यासो वाचस्पतिरयोनिजः त्रिसामासामदः सामनिर्वाणं भेषजं भिषत् सन्न्यासकृच्छमशान्तो निष्ठा शान्तिः परायणम् शुभाङ्गशान्तिदस्रष्टा कुमुदः कुवलेशयः गोहितो गोपतिर्गोप्ता वृषभाक्षो वृषप्रियः अनिवर्ती निवृत्तात्मा सङ्क्षेप्ताक्षेण कृत्शिवः श्रीवत्सवक्षा श्रीवासः श्रीपतिः श्रीमताम्बरः श्रीधश्रीशः श्रीनिवासः श्रीविधिः श्रीविभावनः श्रीधरः श्रीकरः श्रेयः श्रीमान् लोकत्रयाश्रयः स्वक्षस्वङ्गश्चतानन्दो नन्दिर्ज्योतिर्गणेश्वरः विजितात्मा विधेयात्मा सत्कीर्तिश्छिन्नसंशयः उदीर्णः सर्वतश्चक्षुरनीशश्शाश्वतस्थिरः भूषयो भूषणो भूतिरशोकशोकनाशनः अत्युष्मानर्चितः कुम्भो विशुद्धात्मा विशोधनः अनिरुद्धो प्रतिरथः प्रद्युम्नो अमितविक्रमः कालनीलिनिभावीरः शौरिशूरजनेश्वरः त्रिलोकात्मा त्रिलोकेशः केशवः केशिहा हरिः कामदेवः कामपारः कामी कान्तः अनिर्देश्य वपुर्विष्णुर्वीरोऽनन्तो धनञ्जयः ब्रह्मण्यो ब्रह्मकृद्ब्रह्मा ब्रह्म ब्रह्मविवर्धनः ब्रह्मविद्ब्राह्मणो ब्रह्मी ब्रह्मज्ञो ब्राह्मणप्रियः महाक्रमो महाकर्मा महातेजा महोरगः महाक्रतुर्महायज्वा महायज्ञो महाहविः स्तव्यस्तवप्रियस्तोत्रं स्तुतस्तोतारणप्रियः पूर्णः पूरयिता पुण्यः पुण्यकीर्तिरनामयः मनोजवस्तीर्थकरो वसुरेता वसुप्रदः वसुप्रदो वासुदेवो वसुर्वसुमना हविः सद्गतिः सत्कृतिः सत्ता सद्भूतिः सत्परायणः शूरसेनो यदि श्रेष्ठः सन्निवासः सुयामुनः भूतावासो वासुदेवः सर्वासु निलयो नलः दर्पः दर्पदो दृप्तो दुर्धरोऽर्थापराजितः विश्वमूर्तिर्महामूर्तिर्दीप्तमूर्तिरमूर्तिमान् अनेकमूर्तिरव्यक्तशतमूर्तिश्चताननः एकोनैकः सवस्थिं यत्तत्पदमनुत्तमम् लोकबन्धुर्लोकनाथो माधवो भक्तवत्सलः सुवर्णवर्णो हेमाङ्गो वराङ्गश्चन्दनाङ्गरी वीरः विषमशून्यो धृताशीष अचलश्चलः अमानी मानदो मान्यो लोकस्वामीति लोकधृते सुमेधा मेधजो धन्यः सत्यमेधाधराधरः
तेजो वृषोद्युतिधरः सर्वशस्त्रभृताम्बरः प्रग्रहो निग्रहो व्यग्रो नैकशृङ्गो गदाग्रजः चतुर्मूर्तिश्चतुर्बाहुश्चतुर्व्यूहश्चतुर्गतिः चतुरात्मा चतुर्भावश्चतुर्वेदविदेकपात् समावर्तो निवृत्तात्मा दुर्जयो दुरतिक्रमः दुर्लभो दुर्गमो दुर्गो दुरावासो दुरारिः शुभाङ्गो लोकसारङ्गः सुतन्तुस्तन्तुवर्धनः इन्द्रकर्मा महाकर्मा कृतकर्मा कृतागमः उद्भवः सुन्दरः सुन्दो रत्ननाभः सुलोचनः अर्को वाजसनः शृङ्गी जयन्तः सर्वविजयी सुवर्णबिन्दुरक्षोभ्यः सर्ववागीश्वरेश्वरः महाह्रदो महागर्तो महाभूतो महानिधिः कुमुदः कुन्दरः कुन्दः पर्जन्यः पावनो निलः अमृतांशो अमृतवपुः सर्वज्ञः सर्वतोमुखः सुलभः सुरतः सिद्धः शत्रुजित् शत्रुतापनः न्यग्रोधोदुम्बरोऽश्वत्थश्चाणूरान्ध्रनिषूधनः सहस्राक्षिः सप्तजिह्वः सप्तैधा सप्तवाहनः अमूर्तिरनघोचिन्त्यो भयकृद्भयनाशनः अणुर्बृहत्कृशस्थूलो गुणभृन्निर्गुणो महान् अधृतस्वधृतस्वास्यः प्राग्वंशो वंशवर्धनः भारभृत्कथितो योगी योगीशः सर्वकामदः आश्रमः श्रमणः क्षामः सुपर्णो वायुवाहनः धनुर्धरो धनुर्वेदो दण्डो दमयिता दमः अपराजितः सर्वसहो नियन्ता नियमो यमः सत्त्ववान् सात्विकः सत्यः सत्यधर्मपरायणः अभिप्रायः प्रियार्होर्हः प्रियकृत्प्रीतिवर्धनः विहाय सगतिर्ज्योतिः सुरुचिर्हुतभुक् विभुः रविर्विरोचनः सूर्यः सविता रविलोचनः अनन्तो हुतभुक्भोक्ता सुखदो नैकजोऽग्रजः अनिर्विण्णः सदामर्षि लोकाधिष्ठानमद्भुतः सनातनतमः कपिलः कपिरव्ययः स्वस्तिदः स्वस्तिकृत् स्वस्ति स्वस्ति भुक् स्वस्ति दक्षिणः अरौद्रः कुण्डलीचक्री विक्रम्योर्जितशासनः शब्दातिगः शब्दसः शिशिरः शर्वरीकरः अक्रूरः पेशलो दक्षो दक्षिणः क्षमिणाम्बरः विद्वत्तमो वीतभयः पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तनः उत्तारणो दुष्कृतिः पुण्यो दुःस्वप्ननाशनः वीरः रक्षणः सन्तो जीवनः पर्यवस्थितः अनन्तरूपो अनन्तश्रीर्जितमन्युर्भयापहः चतुरश्रो गभीरात्मा विदिशो व्यादिशो दिशः
अनादिर्भूर्भुवो लक्ष्मी सुवीरो रुचिराङ्गदः जननो जनजन्मादिर्भीमो भीमपराक्रमः आधारनिलयो धाता पुष्पहासः प्रजागरः ऊर्ध्वगः सत्पथाचारः प्राणदः प्रणवः पणः प्रमाणं प्राणनिलयः प्राणधृत् प्राणजीवनः तत्त्वं तत्त्वविदेकात्मा जन्ममृत्युजरातिगः भूर्भुवस्वस्तिरुत्तारः सविता प्रपितामहः यज्ञो यज्ञपतिर्यज्वा यज्ञाङ्गो यज्ञवाहनः यज्ञभृद्यज्ञकृद्यज्ञी यज्ञभुग्यज्ञसाधनः यज्ञान्तकृद्यज्ञगुह्यम् अन्नमन्नादयेव च आत्मयोनिः स्वयं जातो वैखानः सामदायनः देवकीनन्दनस्रष्टा क्षितीशः पापनाशनः शङ्खभृन्नन्दकीचक्री शार्ङ्गधन्वा गदाधरः रथाङ्गपाणिरक्षोभ्यः सर्वप्रहरणायुधः श्रीसर्वप्रहरणायुध ॐ नम इति वनमाली गदीशार्ङ्गी शङ्खी चक्री च नन्दकी श्रीमान्नारायणो विष्णुर्वासुदेवो अभिरक्षतु वनमाली गदीशार्ङ्गी शङ्खी चक्री च नन्दकी श्रीमान्नारायणो विष्णुर्वासुदेवोऽभिरक्षतु वनमाली गदीशार्ङ्गी शङ्खी चक्री च नन्दकी श्रीमान्नारायणो विष्णुर्वासुदेवोऽभिरक्षतु श्रीवासुदेवोऽभिरक्षतु ॐ नम
इतीदं कीर्तनीयस्य केशवस्य महात्मनः नाम्नां सहस्रं दिव्यानाम् अशेषेण प्रकीर्तितं य इदं शृणुयान्नित्यं यश्चापि परिकीर्तयेत् नाशुभं प्राप्नुयात् किञ्चित् सोमुत्रेह च मानवः वेदान्तगो ब्राह्मणः स्यात् क्षत्रियो विजयी भवेत् वैश्यो धनसमृद्धः स्यात् शूद्रः सुखमवाप्नुयात् धर्मार्थी प्राप्नुयात् धर्ममर्थार्थी चार्थमाप्नुयात् कामानवाप्नुयात् कामी प्रजार्थी चाप्नुयात् प्रजाम् भक्तिमान् यः सदोत्थाय शुचिस्तद्गतमानसः सहस्रं वासुदेवस्य नाम्नाम् एतत् प्रकीर्तयेत् यशः प्राप्नोति विपुलं याति प्राधान्यमेव च अचलां श्रियमाप्नोति श्रेयः प्राप्नोत्यनुत्तमम् न भयं क्वचिदाप्नोति वीर्यं तेजश्च विन्दति भवत्यरोगोद्युतिमान् बलरूपगुणान्वितः रोगार्तो मुच्यते रोगात् बद्धो मुच्येत बन्धनात् भयान्मुच्येत भीतस्तु मुच्येदापन्न आपदः दुर्गाण्यतितरत्याशु पुरुषः पुरुषोत्तमम् स्तुवन्नाम सहस्रेण नित्यं भक्तिसमन्वितः वासुदेवाश्रयो मर्त्यो वासुदेवपरायणः सर्वपापविशुद्धात्मा याति ब्रह्म सनातनम् न वासुदेवभक्तानाम् अशुभं विद्यते क्वचित् जन्म मृत्युजरा व्याधिभयं नैवोपजायते इमं स्तवमधीयानः श्रद्धा भक्तिसमन्वितः युज्येतात्मसुखक्षान्तिः श्रीधृतिस्मृतिकीर्तिभिः न क्रोधो न च मात्सर्यं न लोभो नाशुभामतिः भवन्ति कृतपुण्यानां भक्तानां पुरुषोत्तमे ज्यौः चन्द्रार्कनक्षत्रहं दिशो भूर्महो दधिः वासुदेवस्य वीर्येण विधृतानि महात्मनः ससुरासुरगन्धर्वं सयक्षोरगराक्षसम् जगद्वशे वर्ततेदं कृष्णस्य सचराचरम् इन्द्रियाणि मनोबुद्धिः सत्त्वं तेजोबलं धृतिः वासुदेवात्मकान्याहुः क्षेत्रं क्षेत्रज्ञ एव च सर्वागमानाम् आचारः प्रथमं परिकल्पते आचारप्रभवो धर्मो धर्मस्य प्रभुरच्युतः ऋषयः पितरो देवा महाभूतानि धातवः जङ्गमा जङ्गमं चेदं जगन्नारायणोद्भवम् योगो ज्ञानं तथा साङ्ख्यं विद्या शिल्पादिकर्म च वेदाशास्त्राणि विज्ञानम् एतत् सर्वं जनार्दनात् एको विष्णुर्महद्भूतं पृथग्भूतान्यनेकशः त्रीन् लोकान् व्याप्य भूतात्मा भुङ्क्ते विश्वभुवव्ययः
इमं स्तवं भगवतो विष्णोर्व्यासेन कीर्तितं पठेद्य इच्छेत् पुरुषः श्रेयः प्राप्तुं सुखानि च विश्वेश्वरमजं देवं जगतः प्रभुमव्ययं भजन्ति ये पुष्कराक्षं न ते यान्ति पराभवं न ते यान्ति पराभवम् ॐ नम इति अर्जुन उवाच पद्मपत्रविशालाक्षा पद्मनाभसुरोत्तमा भक्तानामनुरक्षाणां त्राता भवजनार्दन श्रीभगवानुवाच यो मां नाम सहस्रेण स्तोतुमिच्छति पाण्डव सोऽहमेकेन श्लोकेन स्तुत एव न संशयः स्तुत एव न संशय ॐ नम इति व्यास उवाच वासनाद्वासुदेवस्य वासितं ते जगत्त्रयम् सर्वभूतनिवासोऽसि वासुदेव नमोऽस्तु ते श्रीवासुदेव नमोऽस्तुत ॐ नम इति पार्वत्युवाच केनोपायेन लघुना विष्णोर्नाम सहस्रकम् पठ्यते पण्डितैर्नित्यं श्रोतुमिच्छाम्यहं प्रभो ईश्वर उवाच श्रीराम राम रामेति रमे रामे मनोरमे सहस्रनाम तत्तुल्यं राम नाम वदानने श्रीराम राम रामेति रमे रामे मनोरमे सहस्रनाम तत्तुल्यं राम नाम वदानने श्रीराम राम रामेति रमे रामे मनोरमे सहस्रनाम तत्तुल्यं राम नाम वदानने श्रीराम नाम वदानन ॐ नम इति ब्रह्म उवाच नमोऽस्त्वनन्ताय सहस्रमूर्तये सहस्रपादाक्षि शिरोरुबाहवे सहस्रनाम्ने पुरुषाय शाश्वते सहस्रकोटियुगधारिणे नमः सहस्रकोटियुगधारिणे नम ॐ नम इति सञ्जय उवाच यत्र योगेश्वरः कृष्णो यत्र पार्थो धनुर्धरः तत्र श्रीर्विजयो भूतिर्ध्रुवा नीतिर्मतिर्मम श्रीभगवानुवाच अनन्याश्चिन्तयन्तो मां ये जनाः पर्युपासते तेषां नित्याभियुक्तानां योगक्षेमं वहाम्यहम् परित्राणाय साधूनां विनाशाय च दुष्कृतां धर्मसंस्थापनार्थाय सम्भवामि युगे युगे आर्ताविषण्णाश्चितिलाश्रभीताः घोरेषु च व्याधिषु वर्तमानाः सङ्कीर्त्य नारायणशब्दमात्रं विमुक्तदुःखाः सुखिनो भवन्ति आर्ताविषण्णाश्चितिलाश्च भीताः घोरेषु च व्याधिषु वर्तमानाः सङ्कीर्त्य नारायणशब्दमात्रं विमुक्तदुःखाः सुखिनो भवन्ति कायेन वाचा मनसेन्द्रियैर्वा बुद्ध्यात्मना वा प्रकृते स्वभावात् करोमि यद्यत् सकलं परस्मै नारायणायेति समर्पयामि इति श्रीविष्णुसहस्रनामस्तोत्रं सम्पूर्णम्.
This Vishnu Sahasranama Stotram was very, very close to my father's heart, and that was one of the reasons why we wanted to play it today. My aunt Veda in New Jersey had started this chat and chant group, and she was ably assisted by my other aunt Lakshmi, and we basically meet every 2 weeks on Zoom and recite the Vishnu Sahasranama. My dad would be very interested in joining this group. He would chat along and chant along with us, and also there were times when he would explain different aspects of the Vishnu Sahasranama to all of us, and he taught us the background of this beautiful stotram. So I just wanted to give you a little feedback as to why we were playing this. The next one will be the Hanuman Chalisa, and again the reason why we want to play that today is because Dad was a very big Hanuman Bhakta. So next is the Hanuman Chalisa.
ज्ञान गुण सागर जय कपीसति लोक उजागर रामदूत अतुलित बल धाम अंजनी पुत्र पवन सुत नाम महावीर विक्रम बजरंगी कुमति निवार सुमति के संगी कंचन बरन विराज सुवेश कानन कुंडल कुंचित केश हाथ वज्र और ध्वजा विराजे कांधे मूंज जनेऊ साजे शंकर सुमन केशरी नंदन तेज प्रताप महाजगवंदन विद्यावान गुणी अति चातुर राम काज करिबे को आतुर प्रभु चरित्र सुनिबे को रसिया राम लखन सीता मन बसिया राम लक्ष्मण जानकी जय बोलो हनुमान की राम लक्ष्मण जानकी जय बोलो हनुमान की सूक्ष्म रूप धरि सियाहि दिखावा विकट रूप धरि लंक जरावा भीम रूप धरि असुर संहारे रामचंद्र के काज संवारे राय संजीवन लखन जियाए श्री रघुबीर हर्ष उर लाए रघुपति कीन्ही बहुत बड़ाई तुम मम प्रिय भरत सम भाई सहस वदन तुमरो यश गावे अस कहि श्रीपति कंठ लगावे सनकादिक ब्रह्मादि मुनीषा नारद शारद सहित रहीशा यम कुबेर दिक्पाल जहाते कवि कोविद कहि सके कहाते तुम उपकार सुग्रीव कीन्हा राम मिलाय राजपद दीन्हा राम लक्ष्मण जानकी जय बोलो हनुमान की राम लक्ष्मण जानकी जय बोलो हनुमान की तुमरो मंत्र विभीषण माना लंकेश्वर भय सब जग जाना युग सहस्र योजन पर भानु लीला ताहि मधुर फल जानु प्रभु मुद्रिका मेलि मुख माहि जल झिलांगी गए अचरज नाही दुर्गम काज जगत के जेते सुगम अनुग्रह तुम्हारे तेते राम दुआरे तुम रखवारे होत न आज्ञा बिन पैसारे सब सुख लहे तुम्हारी सरना तुम रक्षक काहू को डरना आपन तेज संवारो आप तीनों लोक आंकते कापे भूत पिशाच निकट नहीं आवे महावीर जब नाम सुनावे राम लक्ष्मण जानकी जय बोलो हनुमान की राम लक्ष्मण जानकी जय बोलो हनुमान की नाशे रोग हरे सब पीरा जपत निरंतर हनुमत बीरा संकट से हनुमान छुड़ावे मन क्रम बचन ध्यान जो लावे सब पर राम तपस्वी राजा जिनके फल पावे, चारों युग प्रताप तुम्हारा है प्रसिद्ध जगत उजियारा। साधु संत के तुम रखवारे, असुर निकंदन राम दुलारे। अष्ट सिद्धि नव निधि के दाता, असबर दीन जानकी माता। राम रसायन तुम्हारे पासा, सदा रहो रघुपति के दासा। अष्ट सिद्धि नव निधि के दाता, असबर दीन जानकी माता। राम रसायन तुम्हारे पासा, सदा रहो रघुपति के दासा। राम लक्ष्मण जानकी जय बोलो हनुमान की। राम लक्ष्मण जानकी जय बोलो हनुमान की। तुम्हारे भजन राम को भावे, जन्म जन्म के दुख बिसरावे। अंत काल रघुपति पुर जाई, जहाँ जन्म हरि भक्त कहाए। और देवता चित्त न धरई, हनुमत से सर्व सुख करई। संकट हरे मिटे सब पीरा, जो सुमिरे हनुमत बलबीरा। जय 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 हनुमान गोसाई, जय 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 हनुमान गोसाई। कृपा करहु गुरुदेव की नाय, यह शत बार पाठ कर जाई। छूटहि बंदी महासुख होय, जो यह पढ़े हनुमान चालीसा। होय सिद्धि साखी गौरीसा, तुलसीदास सदा हरि चेरा। कीजे नाथ हृदय माडेरा, कीजे नाथ हृदय माडेरा। राम लक्ष्मण जानकी जय बोलो हनुमान की। 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 जय बोलो
Yeah, we'll now be singing Omkaram, and after that we will finish up with Asatoma Satkamaya. Om Jai Jagadisha Hare, Swami Satya Sai Hare. भक्त जना संरक्षक, भक्त जना संरक्षक पति महेश्वरा। ओम जय जगदीश हरे। शशिवदना श्रीकरा सर्वा प्राणपते, सर्वा प्राणपते। आश्रित कल्पलतिका, आश्रित कल्पलतिका। आपद्बान्धवा। ओम जय जगदीश हरे। माता पिता गुरुदैवमुमरियल् तरुनीवे,
जगन्नाथ नागेन्द्राशयना ॐ जय जगदीश हरे ओंकार रूप ओजस्वी ओम साई महादेवा साई महादेवा मंगलारती अंदुको मंगलारती अंदुको मंगल गिरिधारी ओम जय जगदीश हरे नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण 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 ओम नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम ओम जय सद्गुरुदेवा नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण 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 ओम नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम ओम जय सद्गुरुदेवा नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण 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 ओम नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम ओम जय सद्गुरुदेवा परमार्थ इष्टार्थ मोक्ष प्रदानं बाबा विभूतिं मिदमाश्रयामि परमं पवित्रं बाबा विभूतिं परमं विचित्रं लीला विभूतिं परमार्थ इष्टार्थ मोक्ष प्रदानं बाबा विभूतिं मिदमाश्रयामि परमं पवित्रं बाबा विभूतिं परमं विचित्रं लीला विभूतिं परमार्थ इष्टार्थ मोक्ष प्रदानं बाबा विभूतिं मिदमाश्रयामि बाबा विभूतिं विभूतिमिदमाश्रयामि बाबा विभूतिमिदमाश्रयामि.
Okay, now we're going to show a short slideshow of Tata's life, basically. It's been put together by all of us. So, you know, just images of his life and with Party and with all of us, basically. And after that, we'll, you know, have a little bit of time to also share some of our memories with him and pay our tributes to Tata. And that'll be followed by messages from others who weren't able to be here. So please stick around for that. And after that, we'd open it up for, you know, everyone here. If you'd like to share something, any of your memories with him, please feel free to come up here and share those, you know, memories with us as well. So here's a short slideshow about Tata.
Hello? Yeah. Now I'd like to call on Dad to come and say a few words. So yeah. Come on.
Hello, everybody. So I want to talk about my dad and try and give you some idea of the kind of man he was. My dad was a man who loved life. He loved God. He loved the outdoors. He loved animals. He loved plants. He loved sweets. He loved traveling. He loved sports. He loved painting. He loved carpentry. He loved making me push his car when it didn't start. He loved his wife. He loved his children. He loved his grandchildren. And he loved giving lectures, which I also got. He also loved getting involved with any activity around him, any activity. He loved giving back to society. For nearly 30 years, he went twice a year to Puttaparthi, each time for 10 days of intense seva. I'm going to leave it to another tribute that has come from Sanikpuri to give you an idea what kind of seva that was. He put his heart and soul into the Sanikpuri temple. I don't know if you saw the picture of the temple complex. That temple, to start with, the whole thing would have fit into this stage. But today, after so many years, there are 3 buildings in that complex, each one bigger than this hall. One is for Lakshmi Narayana, Sri Lakshmi Narayana, one is for Sri Uma Maheshwara, and one is a Jnana Mandir for Sri Ramanujacharya, Sri Madhavacharya, and Sri Shankaracharya. He was always curious. His curiosity never died about any topic under the sun and even beyond the sun. He disliked laziness. So I tried to hide my laziness from him. But when I was in Pilani, my Pilani grade cards didn't help me at all. Those grade cards would come within 3 days of end of the semester. There's one Vijay sitting out there at the back, he understands what I'm talking about. Okay. And my sister remembers very clearly each one of those days when the grade card came home. My dad would stare at the grade card for 5 minutes and there would be silence. And after that, thunder would come. Anyway, so I live to tell the tale. So he disliked not being punctual. So he would land up at any party at least half an hour before anybody else came. And when he was a senior officer, he would be the first to leave when the party was just getting warmed up. My father was a teetotaler, non-smoker, pure vegetarian, clean-shaven throughout his life. Not like the army guys you see in Bollywood movies. My dad never saw Bollywood movies, so it didn't affect him. So one Sunday in Delhi, there are 2 people from Krishna consciousness who came to us. And my dad welcomed them. made them comfortable, sat them, and they said, one should not drink, one should not smoke, one should not eat non-vegetarian. My dad said, I haven't touched any of the three in all my life. They were surprised. And they said, only in India can you find a soldier like this. So they spent the next 1 hour giving us a discourse on the Bhagavad Gita. And after that, they spent the next 1 hour listening to my dad, correcting them wherever they had gone wrong, and how to interpret the text. He had a very short temper. It runs in the family. Sometimes I think it runs the family. But one thing about that temper, when it was gone, it was gone. You know, there was no lingering anger in him. It came in a flash, went in a flash. Now, his father had an even shorter temper. Okay? And I had occasion to see that once. When I had gone to Nugyali for my Upnanam, I was about 18 years old. And we went to Nugyali, and then Dad prepared the namam to put on his thing. And he was desperately out of practice because you can't wear a namam with uniform. What happened was he put a little extra water in that white powder. So he drew that, and a little bit came this way. So he became a Iyengar. And his dad saw that, and he gave him a blasting. And I was watching from a corner. The first and the last time I saw my dad being given a shelling. So my father was very broad-minded. He never interfered in my career choices. For that matter, he never interfered in Prieta's career choices. He only gently suggested options. And if we rejected them, no problem. He was also a visionary. Let me tell you, back in 1972, that's 50 years ago, he told me, and I was in my 10th standard, he told me, after your engineering, you should do your MBA. 1972. Now, what kind of an exposure can an army officer living in small cantonments in small towns across the country have to the business world? But after your engineering, you should do your MBA. It's like I'm in 10th standard, still got many years ago. So and at that time, very, very few people, even in cities, even know what an MBA was. My dad was brutally honest. Sometimes I wish he wasn't that honest. But there was absolutely no question of his asking for any favor from anybody for anything. No departure from the straight and narrow was tolerated. Once, when he was in Allahabad, he was heading a selection center. Candidates coming for interviews and getting selected to the army. So there was a senior general who called from Delhi and said, my nephew is appearing for an interview in the next few days, so I want you to take care of him. So the meaning was clear, take care of him. So my father said, yes sir, I will take care of him. Does he like tea or coffee after breakfast? So he had a sense of humor that would catch people off guard. Because he would poke fun with a poker face. After returning from his first trip to USA, I was very keen to know what his impressions of USA were. Especially since USA is the greatest country that man has created. His reply will not be politically correct today, but I'm giving it to you. He looked at me and said, everybody is fat. That was his first impression of US. Of course, after that, over the years, he talked to me about all the great places that he has seen in the US, and there are so many, so many. Every corner of the US has something beautiful to see. But two particular places that really stuck in his heart was Gettysburg, where Abraham Lincoln gave his famous speech, and the cemetery at Arlington. When he went there, he stood, 10 minutes without moving. Thousands of graves in front of him. Arlington was a huge cemetery. Thousands of young soldiers were killed in battle. And for him, they might have been American, but they were soldiers in arms and brothers in arms. That's what mattered to him. Sorry, I saw that slideshow, I don't know how many times. But you must forgive me. Dad showed a tough exterior to the world, but he was extremely soft inside. He was a strict disciplinarian. That is, my mom and he enforced that discipline on themselves before telling us anything. Both of them were intensely religious, but not ritualistic. More than 50 years ago, they stopped telling me to come to the temple with them. It was my choice. They were ardent devotees of Sai Baba, but they never once enforced that belief on either Prieta or me. More than 50 years ago, they started a strict diet, giving up dinner. 50 years ago. Dad was in his 40s, maybe. This was long before many diets became fashionable. And that's how they kept themselves, both of them, mom and dad, quite fit until very late in life. So in the first 93 years of his life, Dad went to the hospital just 2 times. Once for an allergy attack because somebody had put something by mistake in something that she served him. And the second time was one cold December in Hyderabad, and my mom told him, please shut the doors and windows, it's cold draft, wear your slippers, all that. He ignored everything, came down with pneumonia, so that was the second time. But in the last 1 year, a lot of that changed. In the last 1 year, he went to hospital 6 times. First there was a nerve stroke, then a urinary tract infection, then COVID. COVID was a very severe attack, and then pneumonia, and then sodium, drop, and then finally a heart attack. But the thing about this is every time he went to the hospital and came back, there was physiotherapy and rehabilitation at home. The graph started climbing up every time. He never once complained. And in the flat, some of you have gone to that flat, Prieta's flat here. It's a duplex flat, large hall. So twice a day, we would walk up and down that hall 5 times. And so every time he touched the kitchen door, you count 1, right? Balcony door, kitchen door, 1. Next time, balcony door, kitchen door, 3. No. Then I would look at him and say 2. Then he would look at me and say, okay, 2. And then like that. And then after that, he would climb the stairs. Imagine, he's 94 years old. He's had all these attacks. The graph is climbing up, and he's climbing the stairs. So finally he reached about 11 stairs. almost the landing of the first floor. So then Prieta would call later on from America, and she said, "Dad, did you climb the stairs?" He said, "Yeah." "So how many steps did you do?" 20. So, when he ate his lunch or dinner, I would ask him if it was okay. And if the taste was not good, he would say, "Nothing to write home about." You know. And after that, he would be tapping the table like this. "Where's my sweet? Where's my sweet?" So he enjoyed life, I mean, in his own thing. Then when we came to Bangalore, then I took him to National College, very close by where he had studied. And he showed me the platform, something like this, it was about this high. And this is where Rajaji stood back in 1948. And he pointed to all the crowd of students here, "You young men should join the Indian Army." That was when that was what lit Dad's desire to join the army. My sister and I are forever grateful that we were born to an army officer. We saw so much of this beautiful country, India. We lived in beautiful colonial style houses. I don't know if you remember, you saw one Dharamsala, there was a thing. That house was built on top of a cliff, and it had morning room where the sun would streak in over the mountain tops, and you're having breakfast. And you look out like that, and you can see a valley with a river 1,000 feet below. That kind of house he had there. So we had a great time. I mean, Prieta and I, we went all over the country. And even though we lived in the cantonments and small towns, we had neighbors in the north, east, west, south, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Parsi, it doesn't matter. So, Hindi and English, those are our languages. Even today I speak to my sister in Hindi. I spoke to my mother in Hindi most of the time. My dad somehow didn't learn Hindi, except for the commands that you have to give in the parade. There he would freak out. I mean, he would stand at one side and boom, across the parade ground. Savdhan, Vishram, and he was having a great time. But if he got angry with someone, which was pretty often, obviously, he would say, "You blinking Bewkoof." And after that, no further words. He didn't have enough Hindi to really blast him. And he loved sports. He loved hockey and tennis. His father, my grandfather, once playing in a veshti, barefoot, tennis, and he beat an Englishman on the tennis court. That Englishman never forgave him. Anyway, that was there. And those days, the Corps of Signals had the best hockey team in the country. Won the Nehru Cup 2 or 3 times. If people are familiar with the Nehru Cup, it is. And there were at least 2 or 3 Olympics players in the Corps of Signals team, who I also met myself. And I felt, a small little boy, all starstruck, Olympics, hockey. So my dad was awarded the Ati Vishishta Seva Medal. I think you saw that. The main reason why he was awarded that was for an innovation that he made for laying cables in soggy riverbanks and muddy battlefields. Okay? The Corps of Signals is one of the 2 or 3 corps in the army where you go in, face the enemy with bullets flying all over you, but you don't carry a gun. Because the Corps of Signals, you're carrying signals equipment, communication equipment, not a gun. So that kind of, battle duty the signals people had to face. So what happened here was in one military conference, an infantry general, he was throwing scorn on the Corps of Signals. He said, you guys can't lay cables fast enough. Our infantry goes on deep into the enemy territory and there's no signals. What's the point? So my dad was given a challenge by his commanding officer. 3 days' time, you better come up with something. And he met the challenge. And you saw a photograph of the kind of implement he had. So that laid the cable 3 times faster than previously. That is one of the reasons why he got the ABSM. So all good. Army life was fantastic. There was one negative aspect, if you wish to call it that. In fact, it caused a lot of disillusionment in my mom afterwards. Anyway, so Dad paid the price for being a super efficient organizer. What happened was, in 1970, there was a reunion which had been slated for the Corps of Signals nationally in Jabalpur, Madhya Pradesh, and some 40,000 retired soldiers and officers had been called, in addition to all the people who were stationed in Jabalpur. So it was a big event. And this general, Lieutenant General, he was a signals officer in chief. He's the boss of the signals. So he wanted my dad to transfer from Jalandhar to Jabalpur to organize that reunion. So my dad protested. He said, give me 3 months' time. I need to finish 2 years here. He was commanding a unit of more than 2,000 men in Jalandhar. And he needed to have that in his report, the second report in his dossier, for him to get a promotion to brigadier and more. So the Lieutenant General said, don't worry, Dwalka, I'll take care of you. Okay, reluctantly he went. Then organized the event. It was a fabulous success. And after that, Dad discovered that in his dossier, he was not qualified enough to go to brigadier. So he went to this general and said, this is what has happened. The general shrugged his shoulders and said, rules have to be followed. So he got, anyway, so that happened. But still, Dad remained head to toe an army officer. After retiring from the army, Dad joined a private company in Goa. And some years later, he became the founding director of the Goa Institute of Management Studies, G.V.S. While in Goa, Swami Chimayananda visited our house. And after that, he was all praised for my mom's cooking. So he mentioned it many times. So many years later, he retired from there and shifted to Sanikpuri and started a third career. This time, it was Seva. And like I said, I'll tell you about his Seva more from a person who was part of the team, which will come later, so I won't go into that. So I'll talk about the other major achievement he had in Sanikpuri, that temple complex you saw. It grew from a structure around this big to something that is 3 times the size of this entire plot. He saw it all the way through. That also, and another tribute from somebody in Sanikpuri has come. I'll read that out to you. So today, and that site for that temple was pointed out by sage Agastya. And he said, this is a sacred spot many centuries ago. That site is where the temple is. And today, people come from hundreds of miles around to that temple. And Dad planted, among other things, he planted 300 trees around the temple and took care of them individually for so many years. Today, they're all big trees. So today, that temple serves Vana Bhojana on auspicious days. That Vana was created by my dad. Dad was also capable of producing pithy words of wisdom in one short sentence on the spur of the moment. I'll give you just one example. When Anusha was getting married, we organized a kind of an Iyengar function here in Bull Temple Road. And Snehal, my son-in-law's grandmother, she requested that we have a simple ceremony in the church to take Jesus' blessings. Now I was wondering how Dad would react to that. So I told him, this is the request that has come, so what do you think? And in spontaneous words, simple and powerful sentence, there are many paths to God. Finished. That's all. So, Dad ended anything. And everybody enjoyed the wedding. I mean, you saw the reception, you saw the photographs. Everybody had a blast. There's so much more to say, so much more, but let me wind up, I think, with one important guideline that I picked up from Dad. He never actually said these words, but he demonstrated them through his actions all his life. He said, choose your own path in life. Do your best. God will take care of the results. Most importantly, do not ever blame anybody else for your failures.
Thanks, Dad. Now I'd like to call upon Prieta. I call her Prieta. Yeah, so I'm right. Okay.
So hello everyone, thank you so much for coming here to celebrate my dad, Colonel Dwarakanath. He lived a full and rich life, and he influenced so many people, and he touched so many people in a positive manner. I wanted to share a few anecdotes or incidents in his life that would probably shed some light on, as to how much this larger-than-life man, my father, meant to me. My early childhood was spent moving from one place to another because Dad used to get posted in different stations, and so every 2 years we have to move to a new place. And I had to get used to a new school, new people, new food, new friends. The one pillar was my mom and my dad. So they were the ones that I leaned on in this time of change. And I saw my dad dedicating his life to the army. You know, his devotion to duty, his work ethic, his just love for his country was amazing. He also had a very strong sense of responsibility for the people who served, for the men who served under him. I remember this was in Allahabad. Dad was the commanding officer of the service selection board there. And some of his non-commissioned officers, those are the NCOs, they had not got their paycheck for the past month or two. And Dad was not happy about that. And so he had written to a lot of people, but didn't get any answers. And he told his men that I will not celebrate Holi until I get you your money. And so he finally actually went to Delhi, lit a fire under the guys there, and he got his men their money. Then came Holi. So as you know, in the north, it is celebrated with great pomp and or vigor and josh. And the way it starts in the cantonment is at the commanding officer's house. So they all came to our house, and there was a lot of singing and dancing and throwing color and everything. And they gave my father this peda laced with bhang. And he couldn't handle that. So that, as my brother said, he had one of the 2 times that he had to go to the hospital. That was one time. So he landed up in the hospital very severely sick. And when the doctor was coming to his room at the hospital, he saw, a bunch of men, his Jawans, standing outside just aimlessly. So he asked them, that, what are you doing here? So they said, सांप को देखना है. So then the doctor came and asked my dad, do you want them to come in? And he said, yeah. And so these guys just filed in. You know, they saw Dad and they were just shocked to see him like that with the pipes all over the map. And they just stood along the wall with their hands behind their back, head down, didn't say a word. And after a few minutes they said, "Acha sab." And they walked out. And I looked at my dad and he had tears in his eyes. That 10-year-old girl still remembers that raw emotion that was there on that day and the feelings without a word spoken that were transmitted. Another example of my dad and his relationship with his men was years after Dad had retired. He was in Goa, in Chowgles, and he had to fly to Calcutta on work. So he flew there, and then at the evening he got a cab and he went to his destination, and he asked the cab driver, "Kitna paisa hai?" So that driver said, "Nahi saab, aapse kuch nahi lunga." And so Dad said, "Kyun nahi?" And he said, "आपको याद नहीं है, but मैं आपको याद करता हूँ, आप मेरे कमांडिंग ऑफिसर थे, मैं अपने कमांडिंग ऑफिसर से पैसा नहीं लूँगा." And so my dad said, "Okay, अपने कमांडिंग ऑफिसर से ऑर्डर लोगे ना?" He said, "हाँ साहब, पैसा लो." That was quintessential Dad. When I started my practice, years later rather, and now years ago too, he had asked me, "Who are your first clients?" And I said, "My patients." And he said, "No, your staff. Because without your staff, you won't be able to treat your patients." That was his strong dedication and commitment to his men. Dad was also a very strong believer in women's rights. He felt that a girl could achieve whatever she set her mind to, and she should be given as much support as a boy. And one example was in the third year of dental school, we were part of the student council, and we had to choose our portfolios, so to speak. And so I chosen student welfare secretary. I thought, yeah, how much work would that be? I can focus on my studies. I should be okay with that. Well, that year, that was not the case, because there were some major accusations thrown at the school with regard to ragging, and they said that certain things had been done which actually had not been done. So we were up in arms, and so we struck. And who had to lead the strike? Yours truly. So basically, every other day, we would be going to Panjim, dharana outside the Navin Times office, barging into the editor's office, and demanding an apology. I was quoted a bunch of times in the newspapers. My mom was reading these papers and she's like, "What's going on? Am I sending you to school to study or to do this?" But my dad was like, "You go, girl." Despite his, macho army man kind of look that he had, as my brother said, he had a very soft side to him, and he was very artistic. That artistic nature was very well hidden. And I'm sure that a lot of you would find it as a surprise that he actually painted landscapes in the US. He also did a lot of carpentry. He made beautiful shelves, decorative shelves, a chair, and even the mandasana of my Devarmane at home in the US is made by my dad. He was also an avid gardener, as Badri said. He and Mom had a beautiful garden in Secunderabad. And even in the US, we had gone once to the nursery to get some pots to plant. And there was this one pot which was kind of discarded off by the wayside. I guess it was dying or whatever. So Dad looked at that and said, we'll take that. And I said, but that's dying. He said, nope, we'll take it. So we took that plant home, and he and Mom nurtured it, and it grew into this beautiful, big, climbing rose bush with white and pink flowers outside our house, and people would walk by and admire it and compliment us on that bush. Dad also had a very strong sense of civic duty, the desire to give back to the community. Again, as Badri had mentioned, and you have seen, you know, the temple and all, and also through Satyasai organization, he had volunteered significantly, given his time. Even when he was in the US, actually, he had volunteered his time at the local library. And it was not volunteering for him, huh? He took it on as a job. I mean, we had to drop him in at 9 o'clock and we had to pick him up at 2 o'clock. If it was 9:05, he would go to the front desk and apologize. I'm sorry, I'm late. And they would be like, it's okay, Colonel, that's fine. But for my dad, that was not okay. His point was, if you're doing something, you just go whole hog and just do it to the best of your ability. And so one day he came home and he said, you know, the way they're shelving the books, it's not very efficient. So I'm going to figure out a system that's going to make it easier for them. And I had my, you know, like, it's okay, Dad, you know, they'll be all right. But no. He did this flow chart he made, and he gave a presentation to them. They loved it. They took all his ideas and implemented them. And they wrote him up in their newsletter. They even sent him a beautiful card thanking him for his volunteer work there. As I said, Dad's whole commitment was, you know, when you, as Badri said also, you set your mind to something, you just go after it, you know, just put your whole effort into it. Like the 54th Infantry Division that is garrisoned in Secunderabad has this motto, bash on regardless. And that was Dad. Giving up was not an option. And as he again mentioned, you know, all these illnesses that came at him, he fought them valiantly, bravely, no complaint, and he went to the hospital with a thumbs up. You know, we can do this. That was his desire in himself, and he told me once that he wanted to prove, with all this fighting that was going on in him, you know, like a true Indian soldier, he just did not give up. He said, I want to prove that with dedication, commitment, patience, and faith, anything can be conquered. And he was a prime example of that. I would like to end with a poem, Hero. You held my hand when I was small. You caught me when I fell. You are the hero of my childhood and my later years as well. And every time I think of you, my heart still fills with pride. Though I will always miss you, Dad, I know you're by my side. In laughter and in sorrow, in sunshine and in rain, I know you're watching over me until we meet again. Thank you.
Thank you, Prieta. Now I'd like to call upon Jai Mama to come and say a few words about Tata.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jay Kesri. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Colonel Dwarakanath's son-in-law. I first met him in July 1988, and from that time till now, what stood out was, with regard to him, was the courage of his convictions. He was a very disciplined man with the highest integrity. And you could see this discipline in anything that he did, be it his career or the seva that he did with my mother-in-law, Suvarna. He always believed in doing everything to the best of your abilities, regardless of the assignment that you got. I remember one instance wherein, as others have said, when he'd go to Puttaparthi to do seva, his volunteer team was assigned the task of building the latrines for the pilgrims who would come to Puttaparthi. Dad didn't bat an eyelid, jumped into completing the assignment in record time. He actually consulted with me, given my profession, about the design and construction of the drainage system to make sure that there would be no environmental impacts as such. So he was very, very conscious about all those things to make sure things would get done right. Both Dad and Mom loved to travel, and we were fortunate enough to travel with them to many different places in the US, Canada, Europe, Central America, and the Caribbean. And most of these trips occurred before the pre-GPS time period. So Dad's army training always ended up with him requesting a map so that he could follow where we were going. And before we departed, I would always tell him, I'm going to be heading south on this highway, and I hope to be on it for about 4 hours. Take this exit, go on to this other highway. So he would follow along and make sure that I was going along the right way. So one particular trip that I remember was to the island of Puerto Rico, which is a US Commonwealth or a colony. All the signs were in Spanish, including, various signs for the bathroom, which was baños, or the streets, which were calles, exits, salidas, etc. So we had gone to visit El Yunque, which is the only tropical rainforest in the US National Park system. So as we were walking back to our car, it started to drizzle, and Dad, in keeping with the Spanish signs, said with a deadpan expression, "Male Bartos." So my father passed away in 1997, and I viewed Dad as my second father. I will miss his guidance and mentorship. Rest in peace, Dad.
Thank you, Jai Mama. Now I'd like to call upon my mom, Rupa, Mom, to say a few words about Tata.
Okay, Dad, I addressed him as Pa. I would say Bannipa, Kutkolipa, Tintirapa, Martirapa. So it was kind of, it became Pa. I would address him as Pa. When I got engaged, a very well-meaning aunt came to me and told me that, you know what, you're getting married to a family where people are known to have explosive tempers, right? And by the way, that's true, right? That's true. But what they forgot to tell me is that this was a tough exterior with a very soft interior. It's only when you get to know them, when you start interacting with them, when you start living with them, you know that. And that's exactly what happened with my father-in-law. He was extremely disciplined. He was very principled. I think Badri and Prieta have already spoken about that. He was the timekeeper of the family. Now, there have been instances where he would say that we are going to the temple in the morning, so you folks have to be ready by 8 a.m. If we were not ready by 7:59, there would be a march past at home happening. So we all made sure that we were ready by 7:59. It was going to the temple, and we were on our summer vacations, but it was still 8 a.m. is 8 a.m., and we had to get out of home at 8 a.m. He had utmost compassion for one and all. That one thing which was very defining about Daddy is that anybody who came home, for example, if we got dropped by somebody, the first question he would ask is, did the driver get his meal? Has he been fed? Has he been given coffee? Has he been given tea? So he always made sure that The underdogs were always taken care of. Absolute passion for everybody around him. And I think all of you all heard from Badri about him having served the nation in the Corps of Signals, receiving the Ati Vishishta Seva medal from the President of India. He also has witnessed the first Republic Day in the country. And how many of us can actually interact with somebody who has witnessed the first Republic Day in the country? And I have sat with him several times and watched the Republic Day on television when he would recount about how it was so many years ago and how it is now. And of course, he has also fought 2 wars for the country. Badri and Prieta spoke about heading the Goa Institute of Management Studies after his retirement, and I've heard so many stories about his time at the Goa Institute of Management Studies, and the way he gave back to the society was absolutely awe-inspiring. I mean, it was all about you're there 100% or you're not there at all. That is the way he gave back to society. And I think the other thing which I also would like to, of course most of you all know about it, is that he was basically a walking encyclopedia on scriptures. Anything you ask about any part of the scriptures, he would know what it was and he could interpret that for us. He was extremely well read. He had, I don't even know if there was anything that he had not read at all. So he kind of, and remember, this was from the time when there was no Google, there was no internet, so you could not sneakily give a Google search, learn that fast, and then, you know, pretend that you know about it. It was not that. He really knew what he was talking about because he was really well read. That is something about Dad. He could also, of course, give lectures on the nuances of Vishnu Sahasranam. I don't know how many times I've heard that from him, directly from him at home. I think another very important thing is that in the last 6 years that he was with us in Bombay, he sat down and very, very conscientiously sat down and wrote his memoirs, his life experiences, his life in the army, and generally about life. And that's about 6 whole written, long page books, full written, handwritten by Daddy in his own handwriting, which we now need to get it, kind of published. He had a sense of humor, which they have spoken about, a dry sense of humor, and a legendary sweet tooth. And I'm a baker, a home baker for the family, that's it. And he was an ardent fan of my baking and my baked goods. And I was trying to learn food photography so that I could post pictures on Facebook, and plus I also started a blog on Hebar Iyengar cooking. And so he was very curious always to see how I was arranging the table, to take the pictures. He would have some comments about that, point of view about that, and when I posted that on Facebook, he wanted to know what I'd written and what people were saying about it, and he was curious to know what was going on the internet. He was also a great supporter of my career and my successes. In fact, I know my father-in-law more than I knew my father. I lost my father when I was 23, and I got married when I was 24, and I'm now 58. So I've known my father-in-law more than I did my father. And he became my de facto father after I entered that family. And he supported my career completely. He would be so interested to know what had happened at my workplace, what was going on there, and every time I won an award, he was so proud about all the achievements that was happening in my career at the workplace. The other thing which Badri, I think, spoke about is that he took to the computer and the internet like fish to water. We were so surprised that he became so deft with the computer, going online, checking stories there. He would even, during his illness, suddenly I saw him posting some reels on Facebook. I'm like, how did this happen? Even I don't know how to do that. But he had learned it, and now during the last 12 months, 10 months, he had posted a couple of reels on Facebook as well. The other thing was that he was never, ever tired of speaking about his 2 granddaughters and their successes. I mean, you could get him going on that and there was no stopping him there at all. I think there was a very, very proud and a very poignant moment for the family when 2 soldiers from the Corps of Signals came to the Wilson Garden crematorium and they laid a wreath on his mortal remains. I think that was a very, very moving time for all of us. All that I would like to say is that we don't have to look around too much in search of heroes. You find heroes around you who don't wear capes. They're all around us. And I think Pa, as I called him, my father-in-law, was a hero in the true sense. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mom. Now I'd just like to share a couple of so my very first memory of Tata is basically the word Amani, because that's what he called me. And little Anusha thought that, I have to call him that. So I ended up calling him Amani Tata for most of my growing up years. My most fond memories of him go back to, the Sainikpuri house. And I can still kind of smell the air, around the house and around Sainikpuri and everything. And I kind of associated with all of my summer vacations and exploring the garden and just like random wandering around. So, and of course, visiting the Sainikpuri temple, because that was such a big part of, Tata and Pati's lives. I also remember sort of tagging along with them to, different people's homes to, for bhajans and things like that. And just generally also just, social visits. I just loved it because that meant I could wander even more with them. So that was great. There's a lot that I miss, that I will miss about Tata. But what I will miss most is his utterly straightforward nature and kind of an almost unreal adherence to doing the right thing. It was always, you had to be doing the right thing. No excuses, nothing. So, and you guys have already spoken about it so much. So it's very clear that, a lot of people also saw that in him. And I'm also going to try my best to live by that, I think that's the most important lesson that I'm going to take away from him. He was also an incredibly independent person, and I think I like to think that I've inherited that independence both from him and from, Suvarna Pati as well, because both of them were just, they just needed their space and they, did their own thing on their own terms, and I just love that about them. Especially in the past year, I think it was extremely challenging for Tata, and he really fought hard with so many multiple health issues. And I was amazed to see, how determined he could be, with, walking around and climbing those steps and then lying to you, saying that, I climbed 20. And then when I asked him, how did you do 20? He's like 10 going up and 10 coming down. So, he kind of like, so there was always, a really, he had a quick wit about him, and I just absolutely love that. So that's actually what I found very endearing about him, because he was so tough on the outside, the short temper and, all of that stuff. But, he had this funny bone to him, and like Dad also mentioned, like when he ate that was my favorite thing about him, like that's how I knew whether something was actually good or not. Because if he ate something, then he would say like, yeah, it's really nice, and who made it, and he'd ask all that. But then if it wasn't, there is like nothing to write home about, that was the classic. So that's what I'm going to remember about him, as someone who served the country with a lot of dedication and just absolutely no questions asked, like no hesitation. but also someone who had this very uniquely quirky and funny side to him. So on that note, I'll just end, and I'll thank everybody here for coming and sharing your tributes with him. At this point, we're just going to also share a quick tribute from Aditi, my cousin, who was not able to be here, unfortunately, so she sent it in by video.
Hello, everyone. I wish I could be there to spend this day with all of you in person, but I unfortunately am still in the US until Saturday. So I thought I would say a few words virtually instead. Hello, everyone. I wish I could be there to spend this day with all of you in person, but I unfortunately am still in the US until Saturday. So I thought I would say a few words virtually instead. And his wonderful life. As I'm sure you all know, he contributed so much to the country as a colonel in the army. But as one of his granddaughters, I got to see a different side of him. So I thought that I would share a little bit of my Tata with you all. Tata was always one of my biggest supporters, and even sitting so many thousands of miles away, he would want to be involved with whatever I was doing. In college, I started doing research on Parkinson's disease, and ever since the first time I told him about it, anytime he saw a book or an article or even a random newspaper clipping about Parkinson's disease, he always made sure to tell me about it and ask me to read it. And I always loved how invested he was in everything I was doing. He also was one of my first introductions to Hinduism. For Tata, saying shlokas and doing puja every day was very important. And I'm told that when I was a baby, he would carry me around the house, walking up and down the halls, reciting the Vishnu Sahasranama to me. And even though I was just a few months old at the time, I was a big fan. One of my favorite memories with him, though, is actually from a few years ago, when we were just sitting and chatting. So, a bit of backstory. He always enjoyed technology and was super interested in browsing the web, always checking his emails, and even having one full room in the house dedicated to his computer. I always found that endearing, but this one time, the two of us were sitting and talking about the concept of a group chat. And I mean, group texting was obviously not something he had grown up with or was familiar with, but I just remember how dutifully and intently he was listening to the explanation about it and how fascinated he was by the entire idea. And after that, he started texting more, he became part of our family group chat, and even learned to start taking selfies. And it was just so cool to see someone learning about all of these things for the first time in his 80s, but picking up on everything and wanting to learn more about it like he was still a teenager. While there is so much to say about Tata and his several accomplishments, I thought I would share these few stories with you all because they stick out in my mind as examples of the Tata I knew and the side of his personality that not everyone got to see. Tata was a great man and a force to be reckoned with. He really embodied the principle of never giving up and truly was an example of courage being grace under fire. It is an absolute honor to be his granddaughter, and I just want to thank all of you again for coming today to share this day with my family and celebrate my grandfather. Thank you all so much.
Namaste, Pranam. My homage to Colonel N.S. Dwarakanath, our dear Athambi, a great
day to share this day with my family.
Amma would prepare days were over.
Different side of him.
My homage to Colonel N.S. Dwarakanath, our dear Athambi, a great son of the soil. He led a glorious life, living to the adage of simple living. Our dear Athambi, a great son of the soil. He led a glorious life, living to the adage of simple living and high thinking. Having a conversation with him was a pleasant learning process for me, how He insisted on honesty, discipline, and loyalty. Suvarna and Athambi used to come to Bangalore on annual leave or vacation in today's terms, and we in Chamrajpet used to be excited to receive them. Amma would prepare special items. They always got me nice gifts, a Kashmir silk saree, a shawl from Nagaland, etc. I still have them. I was in college then. After my marriage and over the years, I took every opportunity to visit them at Madras, which is now Chennai, Allahabad during Kumbh Mela with Amma, and later in Goa. I cannot forget the gracious hospitality I enjoyed. Talking to Athambi about the unit or the setup he commanded was always inspiring. The amount of planning and execution and the hard work he put in to keep the Kumbh Mela well streamlined and organized was amazing. After all the Shahi Snan days were over, Athambi took us to the Kumbh village and the tents of sadhus and akhadas. The scale was beyond imagination. Everything was very clean. Public hygiene was given utmost importance. It was all a case study by itself. Another big achievement of Athambi's, which we celebrated, was his getting the AVSM. It was a big event for all of us in the family. I can still remember at Anusha's wedding, Athambi, the beaming grandfather, was a perfect host. More recently, I had the honor of his very short visit to my flat in Pune. I felt blessed to hear Athambi say all his prayers, including Vishnu Sahasranamam, and light the lamps. It created a pleasant environment of calmness I still relive. I was proud that a great son of Mother India, a proud soldier, a valiant officer, our Athambi, whom I always considered as my big brother, was visiting me. The interactions on our fortnightly chat and chant sessions again, the insight he gave on the significance of Vishnu Sahasranama are extremely valuable. We miss him a lot, but I console myself that a great soul like his will have found a very special place at the divine feet of Sriman Narayana. I can see all the good things we saw in him mirrored in his children Badri and Prieta and the two granddaughters. I wish Badri, Rupa, Prieta, Jai, Anusha, Snehal and Aditi all the very best. Thank you. God bless you all.
Dear Athambi, brother-in-law in Tamil, you were the embodiment of a perfectly disciplined and highly respected gentleman. You have left a legacy of values very hard to emulate, but definitely worth a try. We can never forget your dignified demeanor along with words of humor, which were very much part of you. I remember the wonderful time Vardhu and I spent with you and Suvarna when you were posted in Sagar, Jabalpur, Allahabad, and Delhi. Vardhu had a very high regard for you as an elder brother. You are now in the heavenly abode along with Suvarna, with all the Sai Seva and the bhajans you performed during your lifetime. Om Shri Sai Ram. Thank you.
Hello all, I am Veda Gundana, Suvarna's youngest sister. I am honored to say a few words about our dear Athambi and his exemplary life. He has set an example for all of us from how to lead a disciplined life and at the same time be kind, gentle, and friendly with all. As an ardent devotee of Babaji, he and Suvarna both followed a life of selfless service to the needy and bhajans and prayers, his favorite being Vishnu Sahasranama. Since about a year, we have been so looking forward to seeing him during our family's bi-weekly chat and chant Zoom sessions. He gave us great insights into the significance of Vishnu Sahasranama and many other aspects of our philosophy. We are very grateful to him for his efforts in putting his talks together and sharing them with us, and of course to Badri for moderating and coordinating his talks. Of late, Athambi has taught us how to face life's challenges with resolve and a positive attitude. We have a lot to learn from him. Hope to follow his footsteps. Now, Gundana would like to say a few words.
I got to know Athambi more during his visits to United States. He would always be busy building something and discuss those projects with me. He was a very, very caring person. On a lighter note, I clearly remember him coming to Chitradurga before my marriage to check me out. He grilled me with questions on telecom products since I was working in AT&T. Little did he know that the focus of my work was in computer automation of manufacturing processes. We were so very happy that Athambi and Suvarna as elders presided over the Satyanarayana Puja during Mukund's engagement. Our sincere regards to Athambi. We miss him a lot, but his guiding principles will always be with us. Thank you.
With Dwarka Uncle's passing, we have lost a great man, a man of deep convictions and values, of service and caring, and an example for all of us to follow. Naresh and I are extremely grateful to have had the opportunity of meeting him in person on our annual visits to India in the last few years, and particularly being able to take his blessings in person last October before Neeraja's wedding. I did not see him often when I was young, but the times I did are etched clearly in my mind. He cared deeply about family, and that was very evident when Surna Auntie and Dwarka Uncle hosted Mom, Chokma Party and me in their sprawling home in Allahabad during our extended North India trip in 1976-77. I was totally in awe of the way he was able to arrange any excursion we wanted with both flourish and ease. With his impeccable arrangements, we were able to have a dip in the Ganga during Kumbh Mela, see the milling crowds and the Naga sannyasis rushing to the water, and yet be completely sheltered from them. As a kid, I always held him in high regard and approached him with awe and admiration until I saw a deeply caring and friendly side of him. Prieta was looking to go into the medical profession when I was going through my final few semesters in engineering. Dwarka Uncle was concerned about Prieta entering professional school where there would be boys and girls studying in the same class in close proximity. He wanted to know how I functioned in that environment, in fact in a completely male-dominated field that I had selected. I was totally impressed with his open mind and deep curiosity. He was laser-focused on just one thing, and that was to ensure that he could enable and support Prieta in her chosen career. His visit to our house in Pune came at a time when many of my projects were due and exams were around the corner. We used to work in teams at the time, and my friends and teammates came in and out of the house at all times of night and day, and sometimes late into the night as we were working on the projects. He observed our interactions patiently and then asked me to explain how I managed those relationships. I assured him that we all had the same goal of excelling in our chosen fields and getting ourselves a good career. With that in mind, any awkwardness of interacting with the opposite gender just disappeared, and we were just classmates and friends with a common purpose. I was then totally humbled to note that he took that to heart and supported Preeta wholeheartedly in her efforts. Thank you, Preeta and Badri, for the opportunity to share my cherished memories of Dwarka Uncle. He was a truly wonderful man, large-hearted and caring, ready to go to any extent for his family and loved ones. He'll be remembered with deep respect and admiration. May he rest in peace.
Hi, this is Atul. This is Maitri.
Hi.
Well, Dwarka Tata has constantly inspired me to follow a set discipline in whatever I do. He and I didn't speak much or that often, but I silently observed and took in whatever I could. And I try to follow it till today, and I will follow it ahead as well. One of my fondest memories is from childhood is from his house in Sainikpuri, where Anusha, Aditi and I and the rest of the family were there. I think we were digging in the backyard, and yeah, the dog was running around. It was just a fond memory, nothing specific, but just etched in my mind. And yeah, I will miss you.
I was introduced to Dwarka Tata just about 3 years ago when I met Atul, and we decided to settle down together. And when I met him, he said that he had lost a Maithili from the family many years ago when his sister of the same name got married. And he said that now we're gaining a Maithili again, and that's something that's very special to me. It was a very warm welcome to the family. Every time I met him, I did manage to actually have a conversation with him, and he would talk about a few things, and it was really nice speaking to someone so senior. And Atul would say that he was a man of few words, so being able to have a conversation with him was something that I felt was very special. And I'm going to miss seeing him. It was always so nice to meet him.
हाय प्रीता, अंकल के जाने की खबर मिली। अब क्या कहूँ, उनके जैसा होना तो बहुत मुश्किल है। उनके जैसा पॉजिटिव एटीट्यूड, उनके जैसा डिटर्मिनेशन, डेडिकेशन, इंटीग्रिटी, ऑनेस्टी हम कहाँ से लाएं? वो बेंचमार्क जो उन्होंने सेट किया है वो बहुत कम लोगों में होता है। उसे अचीव करना बहुत मुश्किल है, लेकिन फिर भी उनका जो पॉजिटिव एटीट्यूड था, जिस तरह से उन्होंने अपनी ज़िंदगी को संभाला है, बिताया है, और जितनी खुशियाँ, जितनी सेवा भाव हम सब के बीच में उन्होंने बांटी है, वो हमारे साथ हमेशा रहेंगी। और मैं तहे दिल से आपकी पूरी फैमिली को, बद्री, रूपा, अदिति, अनुषा, जय, स्नेहल, सबको माय डीप हार्टफेल्ट कंडोलेंस, और भगवान उनकी आत्मा को शांति दें। बस उनकी अच्छी यादों के साथ हम लोग अपनी ज़िंदगी बिताएं और उनके बताए हुए सच्चाई की राह पे चलें। यही उनके लिए हमारी तरफ से सच्ची श्रद्धांजलि होगी। ओम शांति।
It's a great honor for me to share a few memories of Colonel Dwarakanath. My mind goes back to 1984 when I joined dental college in Goa and made friends with Prieta. Being a hostelite, Prieta would often invite me over to her home. That's how I met Uncle. Uncle would be so welcoming. He often narrated stories and anecdotes of his army life to me. Being an army kid, I enjoyed those conversations. What stood out was Uncle's strong values and principles. his integrity, his loyalty to the call of duty in the army, his disciplined life, his kindness. Uncle was a tough person with a big, gentle heart. Thereafter, I kept meeting Uncle each time Preeta visited Mumbai. The last time I met Uncle was about 4 years back. He stood up and greeted me with a big smile and hug. Preeta and Badri, you were blessed with a wonderful father. You will surely carry forward your dad's great legacy.
Hello everybody, this is Nasreen, a friend of Prieta. I am very sorry that I cannot be there to celebrate the life of Colonel Dwarakanath with you, but I am honored that at least I can send you this message and be part of this celebration. Fauruza and myself want to offer our deepest condolences to the family of Dwarakanath Kesri, all the friends and everybody that his life and his legacy has touched. I'm going to start saying a quote from Eleanor Roosevelt that says, many people will walk in and out of your life, but only true friends leave footprints in your heart. I can tell for sure that Mr. Dwarakanath was one of them. From the first time that I met him, which was in our graduation from dental school in U.S., I noticed the kindness, the joy, the passion that he had, and I could see how proud he was that Prieta graduated with honor from dental school. I was blessed to have known Mr. Dwarakanath in coming years, every time he visited family in United States, and had the pleasure of celebrating many more happy occasions with him and his family. He was a treasure to us all. Mr. Dwarakanath was the man of integrity, principle, goodness, kindness, faith, and many more noble qualities. He truly was a remarkable man. And I want to end this with saying those we love and lose are always connected by heartstring into infinity. He lived an exemplary life. He had a lot of achievements, and we all hope that his legacy and his achievement will be a lesson to all of us in our life. Again, my condolences to the entire Dwarakanath and Kesri's family. My heart is with you, and I hope that we can all be a small example of his life. Take care. Bye-bye.
I met Badri's father for the first time in Delhi in 1974 on the way to Pilani. Badri and I, we were both admitted to Pilani, and a stopover at Delhi is where I met him. He was staying in the same apartment complex, the Kasturba Road apartments, and I was a few blocks away. I visited him at his home. Badri's father, of course, was a very young and energetic person in those days. He invited me and he asked me to come and have a cup of coffee, which I said, I just had a cup of coffee, and his reply, I still remember after 45 years, he said, I've not yet read in the newspapers that somebody dies of a second cup. That's the kind of person he was, so that you don't forget even the words he uttered 45 years ago. That's the kind of impact he had on me. And Badri tells me that Badri's father also predicted that I would make a teacher. I'm not sure whether I'm a good teacher, but I certainly know that there is no other job on earth that I would have enjoyed better than this. No other job that I could have performed better than this. Badri's father I met again once in 2016, if I'm not mistaken. I was about to retire and he had come to Mangalore. I visited him at the Taj. It was a brief meeting. He was getting old. I'm not seeing him soon. He was a very strict person, a teetotaler, a vegetarian, quite unlike what you expect in the military circles. Badri has always spoken about him with great respect and awe, and so it is with me. The few encounters with him have left a deep impression, and that deep impression is a mark of greatness, because you don't remember people so easily unless they have an impact on your mind. Badri's father was one such person. May his family get the strength to overcome this grief.
Hello,